right? We're here at the car bar. We're going to talk about some things today, and I think, and you guys tell me otherwise, but I think it's appropriate to start out with drawing that line between what we're talking about today, real car dealers, real people, real issues. And I think that's a perfect opportunity for our inaugural podcast to take life. First, I think we should introduce who we are and what we bring to this room. Steve, if you want to start.
Sure. This is my 38th year in the car business. When I first started telling somebody I've been in it 30 years, I felt old. Really gets me now when I say 38. I've been in the agent side of the business for the last 27 years as a partner with a gentleman by the name of Mike Conley. Very fortunate to have Mike as a partner. His father started the first. We are the oldest independent agency. I shouldn't say first, but we are definitely the oldest independent agency in the industry since 1967. And it's a pretty big deal to me because I to work with some dealer families that I work with that have been around for over 100 years, to work in this industry that have been, almost 5 decades. We're getting close. It's pretty amazing to be a part of that and experience it and work with some really great people.
That's awesome. And Dale?
Dale Robards started out with the Conley Insurance Group 13 years ago, last month. Prior to that, 7 years on the retail side, wearing many different hats. When I joined the company, kind of hit the road with a book in hand and said to go on selling. And as I've kind of grown through the company, we've changed our vision quite a bit from simply an F&I provider to more of a training and development company that has F&I products to offer. So that's why we've kind of grown and expanded our way, and then we found you.
Found me and found ourselves in a room doing a podcast.
Yes.
Imagine that evolution.
I did not expect this.
Well, yeah, and I'm the newest member to the team, Conley Insurance Group. I handle the leadership side, which is more consulting and hands-on and operations. Been with you guys with your vision coming up on a year. I think I'm coming up on an anniversary here fairly quickly, which is awesome.
Time flies.
Time does fly. Time does fly. But I've been in the retail side, operations side for 27 years. I'm going to age myself, and the gray in the beard is obviously going to show on the podcast and all the cameras. But I started in 1997 and operationally started out in North Dakota, brought me down to Missouri, and luckily, with your vision, both of you, I'm on this side of the table now, and as we begin this venture, specifically this podcast, this is the support that you're discussing. This is your legacy, your and Mike legacy, Steve. As we start this out, this has been a huge transition for me, but it's extremely fun. It's extremely fun. So again, to go back to what we are likely going to discuss, and we're going to protect the innocent on this particular podcast, but we're going to talk about, as the intro indicates, again, talking about real issues, real dealers, real people in this space in retail automotive, the car biz, if you will. So welcome to the car bar, and we're going to talk about some things today. And first and foremost, we're going to talk about being honest, and we're going to talk about what some sales portrays itself, and some sales training specifically, and some influencers in this market space portray themselves as sales training. And again, we're going to protect the innocent. We're not looking to establish any street wars or gang wars in that regard, but we really have run into a time, Dale, and I know you would agree, we've run into a time where the real brass and tacks, real blocking and tackling has been forgotten. We are discussing in today's market, for us especially, tailwinds from the virus. We're talking about getting back to those basics. Unfortunately, and I'll ask you to expand on this, unfortunately, what we see in that marketplace, in that we see more influence and more bluster than we see actual material fact or material training. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. I would think more times than not, if you're looking on social media, if you're finding things on LinkedIn, It's about the fluff. Everybody's banging their chest. Everybody has the same type of ego, it seems like, same persona. And when you get to the store level, it doesn't really translate. So when you get in there and you're teaching these, maybe it's a young sales manager, and he learns this way, and he starts to talk to his people that way, and he starts to relay that message that way, it doesn't land, because then you're combative with your consumer. You know, you're going out here and teaching these guys, like, go kill, destroy, you know, you beat your chest. But we're trying to help people, you know, and that's where I think these young guys that get into like in the sales management role, they forget that they were just out there on that sales floor, so they talk to these people in a certain way, and they're trying to, I guess, figure out a way to differentiate themselves from their recent peers. So they talk to them, they talk down to them, they may go, hey, go get this or go get that, instead of just trying to figure out how to help them. And that's where I get the rub. And it's like, you know, we can do this much easier. It's much smoother if you just remember where you came from, talk to them in a way, help them, you know, because now that you're a sales manager, if you're a leader, they don't work for you. No. You know, you work for them.
Nope.
Your job is to help them accomplish their goal, and what they're trying to get done is sell vehicles, make a living for their family.
100%. Steve?
You hit on something, that an old saying I'm always reminded of: all hat, no cattle.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that out there. I think good fortune we've had. Each and every one of us have worked for some amazing dealers with decades of experience that truly partner with us. And that partnership leads to amazing conversations where you learn someone else's way of doing business. It's kind of contrary to some of the clients we have, that it's a family. They're second, third, fourth generation, and that's the only way they've ever done anything. And where I've enjoyed it so much is they recognize where we come from, not just the three of us, but the other members of our team that just have this incredible layer of experience. And they come to us and say, hey, tell me what other people are doing, because we've earned that respect from them with what we've done in the past for that dealer. Now they're asking us, what are the other dealers you work with that we know are so successful? We hear about them and we see them on reports and we know they do this, that, and the other. What does that look like? And that's something that I don't think a lot of people have, because, no offense to, you know, we've always been contrary to say what they're called big box companies. They're very educated, very intelligent people, not necessarily walk the same path that the three of us or any of our team have. I think that's really lends to Dale's point, because then whether it's leadership conversation, which we have all the time. I mean, how many leaders do we have in our office? Eight,
every one of our team members.
Exactly.
It's all about growing people. And I think that's a lot of what we lose when we start comparing what we're talking about, and what this whole series of podcasts is built around is real dealerships, real issues, real people, right? But what we forget is, in that type of mindset, when unfortunately what our young salespeople that are just coming up, what our young, you know, sales managers that are just coming up, what they're seeing is more of a stage, right, than a sales floor. And the thing you touch on, which is huge to me, is legacy. Like, we work in what I believe, and again, this is going to sound super cheesy, and I own it, right? We work in literally the last vestige of the American dream, the car business. I firmly believe that, 110% believe that. It's the only industry where you can literally start out in the mailroom and become CEO, right? I know I talk about that at length. I do some social posts on that kind of stuff. But Dale, I want you to draw a distinction between some of these larger life personalities, these larger than life influencers, and that disconnect between where we're going to lead our people, you know, versus what we can certainly do, but what we should be looking at as an industry, what we should be focusing on as an industry as we build this thing.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, in our approach, we take into consideration that we are going into multi-generational families. What is their vision for what they're looking to accomplish? Because I've seen it where they go out and hire these guys because they see the persona and it falls flat. So then you got to go in there and understand who your audience is. So we go in there, sit down, talk with the dealer. What are you looking to accomplish? They may be happy with the status quo. They may be ecstatic with what they're doing. They've made a living for generations. They can set their kids up. But they also have put their ego aside and asked us, how can we be better? So we try to do that in the way that best suits their vision, through our teamwork, through handling their employees. That's their family.
Correct.
That's their people.
100%.
Treating them with the respect that they deserve, being honest with them, being there to answer their phone calls when they need it. So that's the big part to me, is like, we have a responsibility to our partners, our future partners, their employees, all the way down to anybody that, if it's in the service bay, you want me to go train you on how to apply a chemical. Treat them with the respect that they deserve.
That's well said. 100%. There are modules that we train on, or that we have been training on, and when I'm asked to define sales, I simply define this, and Steve, I'll ask you this question. I define sales as influence. It's purely influence. You're guiding your customer through a process and you're influencing their decision. Obviously, we can talk about closing the sale. We can talk about all those things, but ultimately it is a means to an end, but it's also what we're paid to do and what we have the personality for and what we get to do every single day as salespeople. But there is a presence, and dealers pay a lot of money for that kind of training, right? They pay a lot of money for that kind of training, unfortunately, and they get caught up in that
enthusiasm, energy, which is respectable.
You hit on it. There is a saying, and I wrote it down in our notes: charisma is cheap, execution is earned, right? So speak to that part of it, Steve.
Well, it's funny. We keep talking about these generational dealers and how the torch gets passed, and sometimes it doesn't get passed as cleanly as somebody would probably like, and you run into that generation that assumes the respect the previous generation earned. And that's a tough thing to try and communicate with, to get to that point where they put it down. To reflect on Dale's commentary, I always had this vision in my mind. I'm a golfer, not a good one, but I like to play golf. And I have on occasion gone out and taken some lessons and try to get better at it. It's what we do. I figured out the best golf lesson ever isn't the one that takes the club out of your hand and then says, okay, you need to do this and this and this. It's kind of a cookie cutter approach that plenty of people in our business do.
Yeah.
There's a script. The best golf teacher says, here's a 7-iron. Go hit 10 of these for me. Okay. Let's just make a little adjustment right here. And it starts with one adjustment. But you allow that person to swing the way they would swing naturally. You allow a salesman to communicate with you as a person how they would, and then you help them by making that adjustment, not trying to make them someone they're not. It's the same thing with any of our partners. A dealer, he has a mentality in a way that he wants his business to be representative. It's by no means in our place to tell you how to change the representation of your business. That's crazy. It's, and they're not always the most polished in the world. Okay, so we make adjustments. We try to encourage them in certain directions to then help them be a better tomorrow than they were yesterday.
I think that's a great point. And again, we're blessed in the automotive industry where we have and just speaking about the sales process, we have a road to the sale that's been pretty true to form for decades, all the way back to the 70s, 80s, starting with the meet and greet and wherever you end that up. The problem with what we're seeing, and which is being received to some of our younger generation in this industry, is that we're seeing them, Dale, they're picking up on this bluster, this whole charisma thing. And I think the kids, I'm not very hip. Okay, I've got some young kids that are keeping me pretty hip, but they talk about the Riz, and that is the end all be all, and building their personal brand and some of those other kind of things. I don't want, and again, the whole genesis of this podcast is built around drawing that difference between what you're getting in the industry and what you're getting in that arena today versus what you really could be getting. We hire, and again, we'll segue a little bit here with a question. we hire because these salespeople possess all the skills that we perceive as great sales skills. And, they've got the personality. They can display their personality. They can, they've got a smile on their face. They possess all the tools, right? In your opinion, Dale, I'm going to put you on the spot. In your opinion, what is that number one trait? And don't worry, I'm coming back to you to ask the same question. What's that one trait that you wish you could interview for when you hired young salespeople, when you hired me, that you wish you could hire for that you just can't see?
Go ahead, stroke him a little bit. Tell him he's young. You hired a young salesman.
Yeah, young salesman.
Again,
It's
the
just a
great.
baby.
There's cameras in this room. They know otherwise. I already said that I started in the
Man.
90s.
I think I say this when I'm hiring our guys now. Just
Yeah.
humility. You're going to be around egos, from a dealer to your coworkers to our
Yep.
team. Everybody has a hint of an ego. Steve put us on a book like The Ultimate Team Player. Said, "Don't be an asshole. Just be humble."
That's it.
Yeah, that's
That's it. And again, that draws the exact. I mean, what we just talked about when I said that quote, that charisma is cheap, execution is earned. Right? I mean, that is the dichotomy between those two words. Couldn't be more polar opposites. Right? And that's what they're getting. That's what they're being fed as far as this in this arena. Again, folks, hang in there with us. Initial podcast. This will not be a topic every week, but Steve, when you see when you walk into a partner, when you walk into a dealership and you point out somebody on the sales floor and you go, "That kid's got it." What's that got it? What is that trait?
I think you're asking for a certain recipe that doesn't exist. To be humble about it, it's having done it for as long as I have, then I can recognize our team's a great example. Everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a strength that complements something else within that team. So I don't know that I have something I could give someone other than a long line of experience to say, "Hey, this is it." And when you asked me that question, it immediately made me think of a particular client. You happen to know that client that I got to know when they were probably 8, 9 years old. Younger than that, because they're almost 30 now. They are an absolute leader. And 10 years ago, before they were even an adult, I went with his mother, "This is a great future. This is going to be it." And then he broke our hearts and left the business and went on his own adventure, got an incredible education for what he does today, which is back in the place where I thought he would have been 10 years ago to lead and move forward. You know who I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And
maybe a future guest.
I would think so. Yeah. And the fun part about it was when the day I got a call from his mother, and her husband owns a dealership, but his mother called me and said, "He's coming back. He's coming back," because we had talked about it so much when he was younger. Like, okay, it's energy. You have to have energy. I mean, maybe that's a basic one. Okay. If you don't have any energy, if you're a limp noodle, this just isn't your business. And in sales in general is not your business. That's okay. You're the smartest guy in the room. There's other roles. We've had team members in the past who thought they were that. They could be an incredible salesperson. And I literally said the exact words, "No, you suck at that."
Yep.
And they were offended. And they don't need to be, because they were really amazing at something else. So I think that's maybe more how I'd answer that question, is to identify where people's strengths and weaknesses are and then help them be even better at it. That could be in sales. It could be in somewhat of a office work in a dealership. I mean, it really could be.
For sure.
Because
For
you
sure.
can find, you've probably run into salesmen in the past where, "Hey, look, you're a great person. I want you to be as part of this company, but I'm going to put you in a different seat." And the amazing thing and the fulfilling thing is when they understand that. And then they go, "Man, I love my job again."
Yep. I think, and again, it's perfect. And again, the answer is amazing, because yes, the overarching theme to all of that is we can see it, right?
Yep.
You can see it. and we hire for it. We typically hire for it, and then we wonder why we get that upside down smiley face, and that salesman that we hired ends up out of the industry 6 months later. The reality is, and again, Dale, I'll come back to you on this one as well. So the reality is, unfortunately, we hire this person who we know can do it. We see it, got a firm handshake, eye contact, the whole 9 yards, has that thing, whether it be energy, charisma, humility, maybe even has a little bit of grit that you can kind of burrow down into, which is one of my favorite traits for a salesperson. But then we see that upside down smiley face because, and again, herein lies the question, they see our industry, they see sales period, if we just want to keep it on that higher level, that macro level of sales. They see this industry with a bunch of influencers and a bunch of charisma and a bunch of this stuff for the social media sites, and they don't unfortunately get invested in at store level, right? At store level, we're not backing them up. We're not the support employees that we should be as sales managers, general sales managers, GMs, and we're just allowing the OEM to train our salesperson, and we're wondering why. We're scratching our heads. We're not looking in the mirror, 6 months down the road as to why we lost that kid. And then we hear those stories at the grocery store too, Dale, that say, hey, I used to sell cars. I did that. Mm-hmm. It wasn't for me. You're damn right. It wasn't for you. It's the best industry in the world, and it wasn't for you. But speak on that a little bit at store level, where we lose these kids, where what they're getting fed today just isn't reality.
I don't know that you lose them from their standpoint. I think we don't pour enough into them. Like I can say personally, from my role in our company, that I've made mistakes. I saw a guy that wasn't going out there as a hunter and going out and closing deals, foolishly let him go when I know he's doing a fantastic job now with another company as a guy who can train and develop, and I didn't see it, and it was foolish, but it's like opened my eyes. So as a leader, I think every leader within a dealership needs to recognize that within themselves, like what can I be doing better? Because everybody that walks in that door is an opportunity to be great. Like you can go in there, It may not be a salesman, maybe they're great at service. Maybe it's a BDC advocate. He can be on the phone, or he or she, or maybe you fast track them to F&I. Just see what it looks like, because it's a different world. Like every time they step into a different role, a different part of them shines. So finding that early. In the meantime, don't lose them. The problem is that we don't train and we don't compensate them. Like in a perfect world, you would see them come in, you would shadow a guy, and then that guy would get the credit for it. So when he goes home and tells his family, what'd you do today? I sold a car. I made some money. That's what they're there, is to make a living. So if you can help them get to that path, get a little taste, instead of putting them in a room and saying, watch these videos, and now you're ready to hit the floor, watch them and find a really good salesperson to shadow. Don't just throw them next to the guy on the end of the block who doesn't have a lot going on. Give them opportunity to be in front of people, learn to walk around, do all the good stuff that they need to do to be successful. You got to pour into them. Like it's an investment in your future by paying them forward. Like give them first.
100%.
Is the conversation we had a couple days ago about John Stockton appropriate?
Yeah.
Not going to be the greatest point scorer of all time, isn't?
No.
But his assist number will never be touched.
Yeah.
That was his role.
Yeah.
Let a role. Led the winning. A lot of it.
There are many roles within a dealership. You just got to find the right one. And there are, of course, going to be people that showed up, they passed all the sniff tests, and they're just not going to pan out because the humility. They don't have the ability to take it on the chin day after day, listen to somebody tell you this is how you can be better, and not absorb it. Like people are built that way.
You've got to have that thick skin. I mean, you're touching on future podcasts for too, that leadership portion of it, and to understand your role as a leader inside of a store is to simply support that sales team is 100. That's a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, we saw how some guys take that as an insult because they're a support role.
For sure.
But again,
we've done that module of dealers, and some of them bite their tongue and bite their lip, right?
Because we're all hunters. I mean, we
are.
We want to be hunters.
We are.
I want to be the tribe that was finding the berries while the other guys are out killing and eating everything. Like they want to be out there too.
Even a facilitator like John Stockton, right? I mean, he's still filling the stat line. Part of why we get into car sales in the car business period is because we're competitive. We want to win. We want to be able to keep score. That's an absolute essential. And unfortunately, another key point that you touched on, Dale, was that part about getting told no. Like, it is hard to get your nose bloodied a handful of times with one interaction, one guest, and you're just getting hammered. They're saying no at every turn, and you're like, what can I do? What can I, and worse, I shouldn't say worse, for the better, because you're going to learn from this, but worse from their perspective, a sales manager comes in and says the same exact thing that they said, and all of a sudden the customer says, okay, and signs up. But again, even the facilitator's filling that stat line. I mean, that's a huge component too. Back to the part about building these guys up and giving them what they need and supporting them. One of the other things that just I can't get far enough away from, that's a hard thing to say, especially on a podcast, is this, again, we've got those personalities out there. We've got all that, and we've been addressing that. But the fact that they're selling these somewhat canned presentations or scripts, if you will, and to me, if I were a customer inside a store and I had, it's very different, and I want to make sure I get this clear for everybody on listening to the podcast. There's a difference between a word track and a script. Script is literally scripted and read, right? A word track is, I've got an idea on how I want to introduce myself to a customer, and it may vary a little bit. It may not. But there's a difference between a canned script, right, which you're typically getting from a call center in India, versus your car salesman in St. Louis, Missouri. So again, if that's what we're getting, right, if that's what the influencer sphere, right, I'm being really polite, trying to protect the names of the innocent here. If that's what we're getting, where are we letting our dealers down, Steve, in your opinion? Where could we draw that line and best support them?
Oh, well, that's not just a real easy question. So how to make a dealer better? Let me start from A. Boy, I'm not sure that I have the right way of answering, Brian. I think it starts with recognizing who they are. You're upping that dealer no different than a salesman on the lot. You've got to determine who that customer in front of you is. A dealer. I mean, that dealer, who is he? Is he want to be represented by this executive manager, or is he on the forefront? Okay, so we've step one. Almost, we call it sometimes the decision maker.
Sure.
So, all right, we figure out who that decision maker is. Now, the next step is, what does that decision maker look like? What are they looking for? Because they're going to tell you immediately, most of the time accurately, oh, this is where we struggle. This is what we need help. Okay, great. Because me coming in there to say, hey, I can fix your dealership is the same thing, the golf analogy I gave a minute ago. It's about listening first to figure out who that person is, who they want to be. And if they don't have the right image of what they should be, that's our job to recognize that. And then that's our job to communicate and go, okay, I see you want to be XYZ dealer. Here's what that image looks like. And they'll typically come to that self-realization. Oh, well, wait a minute. Let's not do that.
Right.
Okay, so let's go a different direction. And so that's a coach and counseling. And I think that's experience. It goes back to my other comment about, being a big box type mentality. There's a lot of success in it because there's success in structure, okay, and a process. We preach and teach processes all the time, but each one of those processes have been designed with the current person in mind. And that's where that, I hope that's what you're looking for in answer to this question.
Yeah. And there was no answer to the question. And I think what we're talking about overarching is systems and how that feeds into how we can best support their processes. And again, then how we can train their salespeople for their habits. That's big picture. That's kind of what we're looking at. But I mean, another word for that Dale, would be culture. For that system would be culture. So when we see these guys and we see dealers make these big investments, I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars to bring one of these, and I'm not saying this in the pejorative, but to bring a character into your store who is all personality, right? All this, they're on stage and they're this big personality. What do we sacrifice when we hire somebody? If we're a dealer, if we're sitting in their seat, right? What do we risk by bringing somebody like this in, what do we risk in our culture? And again, we all know the answer, but what do we risk essentially when we bring a big personality in that we can't duplicate going forward?
Time spent and money.
Yeah.
And those are the two major things, because if you know early on that the process doesn't work, the sooner it's the first loss is the best loss. Like, catch it early, because unfortunately, social media, the internet, you have those personalities get a lot of attention. So they see that and they want that initially, and then they get it in there and they realize, like, if I'm in XY town, that may not go over well with my customers. That may not, I may alienate half my staff. I may do a bunch of things because
you're guaranteed to.
They're just not doing, their personalities won't allow for it. There's a reason that they're not out there on the internet. There are some guys that sell a lot of cars that work in our dealerships that are all over the internet, and they do a great job and they're fantastic at it. But that's their personality. So you can't bring somebody in thinking that you're going to be able to change who everybody else is in the store. They're going to be the same guy. So the easiest way to do it is to create a process that is suited for your organization. And so that's kind of where we've tried to go in and go, hey, this is your world. That's your name on that building.
Million ways
this
to
is
make
your
French fries.
family.
Yep.
Let's go in and interact with them and see how can we highlight their strengths. Let's not tell them how bad they are or tell them where they suck. Let's just tell them what you do really well. And let's see if we can focus on what you do really well, and if that translates into car sales. Because more times than not, I think that's what they need. I mean, it's tough business.
You can't be afraid to fail.
No.
You said earlier. I mean, I failed plenty of times.
It's that humility piece.
We were laughing. I hate to keep using sports analogies, but we were laughing about Cy Young.
Yeah.
The guy had 200 and something losses. You're like, holy cow. Yeah, but he won 500 times. Okay,
Right.
Winning. I mean, that
Doesn't
works.
have an arm left.
Right,
But yeah.
exactly. But that's the truth. I mean, you can't afford to stumble, and
No.
I mean, you can't be afraid, to stumble and fail and make a mistake. Thankfully, I've asked Mike this before. We've talked about some high-level ideas, and the first question in my mind is it going to close the doors? Is it going to put us out of business? No. Okay, well, then let's keep talking about it. If it's going to decimate us, move on, next idea. But you vet the idea, you vet that individual through certain steps until you figured out, yep, I nailed it, we got him, this is the right person. Or, okay, I missed. All right, I missed. Well, let's keep going, because if you walk away from it, that's the mistake. Okay, you learn from that mistake. That's an old adage, and we tell our kids that, we've learned, we're trying to keep you from the mistakes we made. Whatever, you have to make a mistake or you're not going to grow.
That's an absolute truth. I mean, 100%. And again, if you have the right culture, again, another word for system, but if you have the right culture in your store where you're all rowing in the same direction, right? Your failures are never really failures. If you're trying to grow that salesperson, and again, we'll just distill it down to that floor level. If you're trying to grow your salesperson, it takes a team to sell a car. And if we're not all raising our hand or running to meet that customer, early management involvement, early and often management involvement, it's to that end. We don't need to train mistakes away. Make the mistakes. Absolutely make the mistakes. Don't make a cardinal sin. Don't commit a cardinal sin, in the sense that, a customer's going to stand up out of their chair and bolt out the door and leave you with the middle finger as they walk out. That's not what I'm talking about. But making there is no mistake. If we're all singing off the same hymnal, that just doesn't happen. It's not possible in a dealership setting. The worst part about when we talk about personality, you can't duplicate personality. You hire one of these big trainers to come in, and they come in and they give you all the cool catchphrases, and even to the sport analogy, you miss every shot you don't take, and relating everything to all of those kind of things. You can't duplicate it. What are you giving me that I can duplicate? What are you giving me that I can monitor, that I can train, that I can assist in execution? Like, give me something that I can use to help build my staff, right? If they're not working on these skills, what is there? I can't ask them to be. I gotta protect the names of the innocent. I'm not asking them to carry this giant personality, in with every exchange. I'm asking them to learn the skill set that it takes and apply it to their personality.
And sometimes you got to rely on those salespeople when you are spending that money to bring these folks in. Maybe it's not your cup of tea, but when we go out and do training and stuff, a lot of it is repetitive. But if you take away one thing that can help you be better the next day,
Yep.
great. I think it's worth it. From a dealer, I think if he said, hey, half my guys walked away with something, it's a win. You know, I don't see it as a bad thing. Obviously, they want training. They need the help. God knows, like with all the things going on in the car business, that time is of the essence. So you don't have sales managers out there able and willing to go out there and do the things that need to be done. So if you can put guys in a classroom and you brought a guy in, maybe isn't for everybody, but hopefully somewhere in all the bluster and the craziness, there's a message, and I believe that message probably lands. It's just how do they find it within themselves to make that message come across like in their words.
See, we don't hate all influencers. We can take a message.
No.
We can take a little
No,
diamond
yeah.
out of that. Absolutely. And I agree. I agree 100%. There is some magic to it. And building your personal brand, there is some magic to that. Social media, there's magic with that as well. And you do see salespeople, you do see managers in store that are really applying that to their career and can really succeed with it. We're not taking away any of that. You know, what we're talking about is truly getting down to the basics. Again, you know, unfortunately, Steve, I'll kind of set the stage for this for you, but tailwinds from COVID were certainly the case where we somewhat forgot. Was this the first podcast I've ever done? We somewhat have forgotten how to sell cars, how to apply that influence to our guest experience, right? We truly have. So again, what we have to do and what the arbitrage is moving forward is that training component. And again, when we start talking about the car bar on the whole, this podcast, this concept, you know, we're applying real dealerships, real problems, real people. We're discussing all of that. We have to be able to differentiate from the charisma, the riz, or whatever the kids are calling it nowadays, and just get down to blocking and tackling. Like we have forgotten, and then we promoted those individuals during COVID that were, in a sense, order takers during that period. We'll just call it what it is. We've taken them and then we promoted them to sales managers. And unfortunately, Steve, we find in stores, and I'll ask you to speak about this, where even leadership is somewhat disconnected from when we were somewhat dialed in with our sales processes prior to COVID.
One of my favorite people, great friends, old client, old soul, much younger than me, said it in 2021. We got to get back to training right now because we're going to forget how to sell cars. His vision and saw it so quick and early to recognize that was, you know, the reason why he's still very successful and steps ahead of some of his closest competitors, because everybody got a little fat and happy and got off the basics. It's, you know, we keep using the sports analogies, but I love them. Blocking and tackling. I mean, that's the old Vince Lombardi mentality. And last time I checked, the guy was pretty successful and did a pretty good job. You know, go Pack. Not even a Packers fan, but you love him because people like the Packers because that guy was such a great leader and such an inspiration outside of the sphere of Green Bay. You recognize that, right? And that's it's kind of a you talk about legacy. There you go.
100%.
And that's what I think we sit here and we talk about leaders. That's what they do at every level. And a leader could be literally the guy that runs the detail shop in a business. If that guy understands what leadership is, doesn't make him a leader, but he understands it, he'll probably embrace it more. And leadership comes with humility, 100%. That's probably the biggest dose. And then they take it from there with their team. Then if you want to get to a sales manager, the best sales managers aren't the guy that can necessarily go out and close every deal for a salesman. He's the guy that understands what buttons to push, what levers to flip, and to guide his team to be successful. That's what it's about. It's not, you don't have to be the best at every single position.
Nope.
I always look at guys like
And you can't be.
Bill Belichick probably, as a matter of fact, I think he was a tight end, wasn't a very good football player. Some might say he's a pretty good coach. Again, won a lot, but that's what makes them different. You don't have to be great at that one single thing. You just have to understand what leadership is and then work in conjunction with all those people that are part of your team.
Kind of the last segment that we had noted for this podcast. And it's funny you say that too, because Michael Jordan was a hell of a player. Some would say he's a terrible coach, right?
How can you teach to do what he does? Like, you can't do that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's all he knows.
Yeah. But to build on what you guys are saying, this is a car bar conversation.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's some salespeople listening. We've got to put some onus on the guys that are the boots on the ground too, to like learn to get better, invest in yourself. This is your business within a business. Like, you have this opportunity to grow exponentially. You can be, I mean, you can become the man. You can put your name on a building someday.
It's mailroom to CEO. Yep,
absolutely.
100%.
So you have to, I think that's another thing that we forget. Remembering being in that sales position, it almost feels like a job when it's a career. Like, you have an opportunity to show up every day, run this as if it's your own organization, take full control of it. You will climb the ranks because you have personal accountability, and you can climb, and people are going to respect that. Your leaders will recognize leaders.
Yes.
They will see that, and you'll be able to move forward in the career that you want to move forward in. But
Own that detail shop as if it was your detail shop.
Yeah. Put your name
As if
on
your
it.
name was on the building,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Pick
it.
up the garbage, mop the floor, whatever is needed to help. So 100%.
It's a great business to get into because they carry all the risk. They own all the inventory. They pay
Yep.
the lights. They pay the phone bills. They pay the internet. All you have to do is go in and run your business within their business.
Yeah, if you guys haven't noticed that are listening to this podcast, we like the car business. So, and Steve, you already touched on this. So, the last note I had, the last part of, again, drawing that distinction between who we are with this podcast and what we've seen in this space. The part that you already touched on, so I'm going to come right back to you to expand on it. When the energy fades, the process stays. Okay, only every single time. What we see in this space with these influencers, with these quote unquote sales gurus, is that they're talking about the close, the dim dum doozers, the sizzle on the steak, whatever you want to call it. I personally believe there is no such thing. You've already said, in essence, that it's everything you do leading up to it. Give me more on that.
So couple boys, early 20s. One's getting ready to finish college, said to me last night, I don't know what I'm going to do in the next couple of years. He's young. We'll figure that out. I would have said the same thing at that age. I got an opportunity. It resonated with me. So I had the ability to work with some amazing people that I learned a lot from that didn't have to do anything more than continue to feed the part of me that they saw as excitable, as enjoyable, and kept leading me farther and farther and farther. I couldn't hire my son to sit in this chair today, and he knows it. And there is a mentality at some, I hate to be derogatory about a generation, but the millennials or whatever it's called today, that they want instant gratification.
Sure. Absolutely.
I wasn't born in the 20s, so I'm not that old, but it just doesn't work that way. I don't care what you are in this world. It just doesn't happen overnight. So to spin it to Dale's point, because Dale's an amazing leader, has just done incredible things in the 13 years been with us. Thank you. What he realized is teaching other people to encourage the ones they work with, that maybe work with them or for them, to continue to chase what does excite them. And that's what it is. And it goes back to going from, washing cars to having your name on the building. What always has been a very center point in my life, to be personal, my grandfather worked for a company that most people listening to this podcast, unless they're a certain age, won't remember, a company called F.W. Woolworth.
Yeah.
Woolworth was the original five and dime store, and if it gives anybody any indication of how iconic they were in America, their icon on the New York Stock Exchange was W. They were one of the originals, and he worked for them for 49 years, and he did exactly, and then changed the name to the company to his from Woolworth, but just the same. He started sweeping floors to, working in their historic building on Wall Street and retired after 49 years. And he found that, and that was, that drove me, always having that in my mind. But I think, not to digress, but I think you recognize as a leader what inspires someone, and you feed that, and you continue to give them that opportunity, because the repetition of it will lead to the success, and the first success will lead to the second and the third, and so on and so forth.
But what we're trying to draw the distinction between is what is getting fed to our current young up-and-coming salespeople versus what they should be focused on. You can have that trait. Build your personal brand 100%. But if I'm Brian Jacobson on social media, but I'm also Brian Jacobson with Utopia Motors in St. Louis, Missouri, okay, that is my business profile. That is my landscape. I could do it all. But you've got to focus on the business. You've got to focus on having all that skill set, all that inherent talent and ability. Yeah, apply it to social media. But you've got to get that dialed in. There is a component of basic training to it. There is a level of sales team 6 aptitude that you're going to certainly have to grasp before you can really do anything on the social side, because you can't fake that belly-to-belly interaction with a customer. You simply can't. You can't. And on social media, you can fake whatever you want.
This is like riding a tricycle for me, because they laugh. You guys laugh at me because you've heard me say it a million times. Podcast, whatever. What does that mean? I don't listen to them. I don't watch them.
Yeah.
I don't understand them. But to his question, I think that's the obligation is to try and minimize the dust of someone that's just running around in circles, stirring up dust. Because you can't get a clear picture. All somebody's done is and that's why I shun away from a lot of social media, because it's noise. And I know better now. Is it my obligation here to answer questions? And my obligation is to speak experience and the truth. I mean, I'm very proud of all the steps I've had to make in my life, and held a good reputation for it. And that's the old saying, you got one chance for a reputation, or first impression. There's varieties of that saying. And so the obligation is to say what's right, do what's right. Actions speak louder than words. That's where the Venn diagram example, you make sure that people end up in the proper space instead of in that dusty area where there's nothing but a lot of noise and confusion.
The whirlwind.
No, yeah. I think you should absolutely embrace social media. If that's your authentic you, if you can go out there and be yourself, and that's an engaging personality that folks want to come do business with, absolutely. My kick is that I don't know that 100% of your influencers are being 100% authentic 100% of the time.
Yeah.
That's my thing. Is like, are you getting that guy? Is that the guy that's walking in the door? Awesome. Because if that's the guy I signed up for, and that's the guy that walked in here, and maybe he can deliver that message, fantastic. The reality is that everybody's seen it with the social media. It's everybody's highlight reel.
Well, but that's the challenge, don't you
realistic?
think? Yeah. With that,
can you do what you say you do?
Well, true, but and we've had some funny examples of that. But it's the whole thing of the generation and the proliferation of social media has really put a lot of, some bad stuff out there. You can get into the politics world if you want to and start talking about, the conspiracy theories that are floated out there. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Somebody's kind of floating, the best conspiracies out there that may not be true. And that's the challenge, I think, for someone that does a very reputable, ethical job. That's the key. You can't ever get away from that. You mess up one time, and then somebody goes, wait a minute, all the other things. And I think that's where the social media influence, where I struggle with it personally. But I guess we're old enough to say, been there, done that. We can pick the fly shit out of the pepper, so to speak. But a lot of people can't. So it's our job to help them recognize what's noise and what's real.
Here's-
That's the double-edged sword of it. I mean, and I make fun of myself because of my lack of podcast experience and social media experience. I'm not an idiot. I recognize it's marketing. I actually said this recently. In the back of my mind, I would hear people saying, "Oh, what are you going to school for?" I'm talking to somebody. I'm getting a marketing degree. Okay, what is that? What?
Right,
I mean,
right.
I didn't see it as a trained skill like an engineer or a doctor or whatever. But I did come to the realization, okay, if you truly understand what this social media animal looks like, having a strong marketing ability, really down to an individual, if you want to promote yourself as an individual, if you have a great, strong marketing person, that's a huge plus. That's going to get you so far down the road as an individual. Okay, well, then in a business, It's the same thing. But it's just such a double-edged sword because too many people abuse it, and then they go over the top, making promises, under-promising or over-promising, under-delivering. That's just a common mistake in any sales capacity, much less the industry that we're talking about. And it's a kiss of death.
100%.
You can't fix it.
Yeah, the industry's shifted too. I mean, we're foolish to think that dealerships don't have marketing people now. That's what, and they understand that that's
In the social
a
aspect.
new avenue to generate customers. We're sitting in a podcast right now. You guys realize that, right? So we're embracing that world, and we understand that it's a necessary evil.
How long did it
Are
take
we-
you two guys to drag me to do this?
It's been a while. It's a necessary evil.
Oh,
I mean,
it
we
hasn't
need
been
it.
that long.
You know, if you want exposure, you want to find folks that are outside of your neighborhood. This is where you go. I mean,
We're gonna circle back
recognize.
again. We used to talk about this at the dealer level. We used to talk about ROI. We used to talk about ROI. If I'm spending $4,000 with Auto Trader, what am I getting in return? How many cars can I attribute to those to that spend? How much am I spending on radio, and how many customers are we getting in the door? What's our average advertising per customer? What's that number? What's that KPI? So when we start talking about social media space, and when we empower our salespeople to be I guess their own marketing department, their own brand ambassador for that, it shifted from ROI to ROE, right? Return on engagement, right? But again, I think that's all fun, and I think that's all great, and I think we could probably explore that on another podcast. But here's the kicker to it: you can get somebody in the door. Dale Robards, whether you associate that to Utopia Motors or not, you can get somebody in the door. But if you disappoint the minute they set foot on your showroom floor, you pour cold water over that guest, what do you got? You got a lost opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all you have. So again, when we marry these worlds, it's a brilliant question, and it's a brilliant, perfect case scenario for how we should be doing it. Yes, 100%. They should be all of the above. This generation will be, regardless of us training that side of it or not. Where we can focus on and what we should be looking at is how do we grow them as salespeople? How do we fit? Do they fit in our culture? Can we train them up to be sales team 6 level sales associates? And are they disciplined enough to do the habits commensurate with that input versus outcome kind of mentality?
I'll give you a phenomenal analogy, just hit me. So 40 years ago when I started doing this, we literally would go into a service drive, customers bringing their cars in. And we turn the car on. You're shaking your head, you know where I'm going?
I do.
And we would look at what radio stations were programmed in the car to say, okay, where are we going to spend money for marketing? Mm-hmm. Well, just like we've advanced, I'm not going to admit that I've advanced that far so far, but I'm getting there to the point of social media and what this is. Today, nobody's going to look at that. They're going to go to digital data. They can go out there to figure out where the traffic is and then understand how to communicate with that customer. And it goes to the question that was asked us earlier. That's the progression, that if you have somebody like you guys that have their ear to the ground and knowing how the market shifts are happening, and you won't get them all, but you know what's going on, you can really coach, train, stay in step with those changes that just the world's gone through.
Yep.
But how crazy is it that we went from a push button, and now believe me, 40 years ago didn't still have push button radios.
8 tracks in
They
there?
Yeah, there might have been an 8-track or two, but a lot of cassettes. There were still cassettes. It was pre-CD.
Or your 10-disc CD changer in the back of the vehicle.
Actually, CDs were out by then. But
Distracted driving.
No,
yeah, no kidding.
Where's
Exactly.
that book at?
My glove compartment.
Exactly. But think about that's how cavemanish with a rock, we were just looking at what people were listening to on the radio.
These
now, you couldn't do
100%.
that.
This is all in the evolution of retail automotive. The car biz has evolved to this point of it, incorporating this part of it. But what it's bolting onto, what it's really has to be integral to any success in any dealership, no matter how good you are at marketing, no matter how good you are at social media, no matter how good you are at any of those things, you got to have that core. You got to have that system, process, and habits.
Blocking and tackling?
Blocking and tackling.
Okay.
And you and I did this project. We rolled out a project in Utah similar, where we started looking at putting in metrics and KPIs for how many calls, how many emails, how many texts. What was really ironic to that, and again, I come from the generation that had a card box as my CRM. This is all before computers, right? Before CRMs were even a thing. And I would move that customer follow-up to the back of the card file. And that's how I did mine. It was my birthday calls, my anniversary calls, all those things. It was all listed on a card, an index card. People don't even know what that is. I have to say what it is, index card.
Like a Rolodex?
We have evolved. We've grown into this. But now what's funny is you've got phone calls, outgoing emails, you've got text messages, those core, but communication also is social media post, video highlights, right? And some of these other things that are coming into play that we're asking salespeople to do from the sales tower, that lends itself again to that thing of marrying the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And to answer the question, I don't think if it's taken that way that we are trying to discourage anyone from social media. It's obviously the way of the world.
Right.
Saying when ingesting information from social media, use some discernment, like figure out what makes sense to you and what's real, what's fake, like really dig down in there. Like, again, there somewhere in that story lies the truth. Just got to find it.
But that's also part of the partnership of trusting people that have, waded through these waters and can give you clear, concise answers.
Find the substance and prioritize that over the style.
Yeah.
Because again, when the energy fades, the process will remain.
Simple enough.
No more questions. We out.